The high exchange rate of the dollar to the naira is beginning to see Nigerians pay more for gas, with indications that the price might rise even further. Marketers, in their reaction to high exchange rates of the dollar to naira, hinted that it has a negative impact on importation. Meanwhile, the war between Russia and Ukraine has also affected the supplies of gas. And on the other hand, gas production from the Nigerian Liquefied Natural Gas Limited, (NLNG) has plummeted. According to sources, the drop in output was majorly due to the high level of theft as well as oil and gas pipeline vandalism, which has left the NLNG operating at about 60% capacity. Well, I introduced him earlier. My guest is the founder and managing director of Cowrie Assets Management Limited, Mr. Johnson Chukwu. Mr. Chukwu, thank you so much. It's always good to have you join us on the program.
Thank you, Tony, for having me. The pleasure is mine.
Yes, I know that we've talked about this forex scarcity, the disparity, and all of that in recent times. But this time around, I want us to, stay around its impact on oil, and I'm talking about fuel prices now, because we depend on importation and we bring in these products. Marketers have come out publicly to say that this is killing business. They are paying double of what they ought to pay for some charges. Let's start on that note. What do you think is responsible? Why can't they also get access to FX like the likes of NNPC would get?
Well, Tony, we don't have enough FX in the country as we speak today. So what has happened is that NNPC, being a government-owned agency, of course, we know it's now a limited liability company, but it's still 100% owned by Federal Ministry of Finance, Incorporated, and the other agency of government. So they obviously have more access to FX because they have the access to the CBN governor. And as it stands today, NNPC is a sole importer of fuel, PMS, or premium motor spirit, into the country. The other marketers, other operators in that market do not have access to FX and therefore unable to import. And if you don't have access to FX, you certainly can't import PMS. Of course, another factor that has also constrained them from importing fuel is that the price of fuel is regulated. I think the GMD of the NNPC just said yesterday that the landing cost of fuel in the country is more than 400 naira. And if the cost is more than 400 naira, you have a regulated price of maybe 160 naira, 165 naira, then it becomes impossible for private sector operators to import, even if they have to get dollar from any source. That's one factor. The other factor is that there are some charges that are borne in the cost of importation or even in the cost of taking products from NNPC to your depot that are dollar denominated. And these importers cannot even access the dollar from the official market, from the central bank. So they have to rely on the parallel market to fund those transactions. For instance, the cost of freight, which is shipping, that you need to take product from a mother vessel to your depot, is paid in dollars, it's priced in dollars, unless you have access to it.
So, exactly. Go ahead, sir. Exactly. That's my.
The people who have access to using a vessel from NNPC. Then you also have to pay charges like MPA charges. MPA charges are billed in dollars. And then you have NIMASA charges also billed. You have the dollar component and then you have the naira component. But the latter portion of it is dollar component. So you also have to look for FX, which you can only get from the parallel market because you can't get this from the central bank to bid and get to pay your NIMASA charge and MPA charge. And these are government agencies. So the government cannot pretend that it's not aware that making local business operators who are in the oil and gas sector to pay NPA charges in dollars and NIMASA charges in dollars has also further exerted pressure. And what happens that when you have to buy dollar in the parallel market to pay for these charges, either you pay your freight and you pay your MPA charges and your NIMASA charges, you certainly have to price this into your landing costs. So ultimately, your landing cost is even beyond the pump price of fuel or the depot price as stipulated by the government, by Nigerian upstream and midstream and downstream regulatory authority. So, which is the agency regulating the price of fuel, because the costing the costing template did not factor in that you are going to buy dollar at maybe 780 today or 790 today, and it was 900 just about last week. That you have to buy dollar at that rate to be able to pay your freight charges. So the challenge you have today is that, one, there is scarcity of getting FX. Two, if you get this FX, you have to buy it at the parallel market rate. And three, you are compelled to pay for some statutory charges in dollar instead of in naira. And these things have to be added up to arrive at your depot price, your depot cost and depot price.
So clearly with all of these challenges, the fixing of a price might be unrealistic. I'm thinking around that fixing prices with all of these challenges might not be possible. And like you said, government shouldn't shy away from all of these agents. Why do we have to pay in dollars? I'm worried about that too. I don't know if there's anything, but do you think that it is realistic at this time to fix the price of PMS?
You know, the cost, let's start from cost, because when you talk about price should ordinarily be cost plus some margin, some reasonable margin. So if you dwell on the cost, and if the costs have become so fluid, in the sense that because the cost is partly composed of the cost of exchange of naira to dollar, or because you are paying dollar bills. So, and the exchange rate has become unstable. So it then means your average costs of landing products at your depot have continued to move on a daily basis, on hourly basis. So if it has continued to move, then it also follows that your price that you sell the product whose cost is variable, almost on a daily basis, has to be variable. So now, if you continue to fix price at 165 naira, 170 naira to per liter, when the landing cost of petrol, even if you put the cost of government constant, because the government is already bearing a lot of burden in terms of subsidy, even if you put that at fixed and the state government have to bear that cost, the business operators do not have the federation account, federally collected revenue that they have to deduct their subsidy. So the business operators do not have capacity to subsidize the cost of fuel at their depot. And that means that anytime the exchange rate changes, their cost of operation changes, because that directly affects their freight charge, directly affect the amount they pay as NEMASA charge, directly affect the amount they pay as MPA charge. And when they add up this, they have variable landing cost of fuel in their depot. And it's just logical that if they have to remain in business, they have to adjust their depot prices to reflect the cost that products are landing at their depot. So if you want to have a fixed cost, then you are going to do one thing will happen. That is, you drive the independent marketers and the depot owners out of business, or you're going to create an artificial scarcity, because what they will do is that they will sell only to those who want to buy at their price. And those people will go to because there will be naturally be some level of scarcity. And those people will compel Nigerians to buy those fuel at even much higher costs than they would have if you allow prices to adjust based on the landing cost.
Interesting stuff there. Now, the conclusion of marketers, both independent, major, darkman, the depot owners, is that we should outrightly deregulate. Of course, that's what the PIA stipulates if we are to follow the PIA to the latter. But my question is, how do we deregulate when we're yet to even know what we consume on a daily basis?
You know, there are two things. At where we are today, we really can't wait for any perfect information before we deregulate, because the burden is huge. I think the NNPC GM said we are spending about 260 naira to subsidize every liter of fuel. Just imagine the burden on government. I mean, the government has started the figures of consumption about 60 million barrels, 60 million liters a day, and just multiply 60 million by 260 naira per liter. And you can understand the weight the national economy is carrying when it comes to subsidizing petroleum products. So, and another thing we also realize is that if prices adjust in tandem with the landing cost of fuel, if the consumption will drop significantly below the 60 million liters, assuming the 60 million is a sacrosanct figure. But we know that because of the huge disparity between the pump price of fuel in a country and the pump price of fuel in neighboring African countries. It are smuggled into neighboring countries. And that then means that we are subsidizing consumption in our neighboring countries, which will eliminate if we remove the subsidy. So maybe and then you also have frivolous consumption. People, because the price of fuel is cheap, they just enter their vehicle and then drive around, and then they don't care that they are consuming a product which some other person is paying the cost. So if you remove the subsidy, you're also going to eliminate some level of frivolous consumption. So in effect, maybe our consumption will drop from 60 million, which has been quoted severally, to maybe about 40 million. And that will mean that even the amount we spend on importation of fuel in terms of foreign exchange outlay will also reduce.
Interesting stuff. But if we start to refine, hopefully, Dangote refinery comes on stream. Port Harcourt refinery is expected to also be, the rehabilitation should be completed, I think, maybe the first quarter of next year, according to the NNPC. We'll still follow up with that too. And I also think there's an agreement to fix the Kaduna refinery. I think one of the refineries along that axis. Will that help address this, maybe this angle of paying freight and all of that? What will it really help us address? Because I know the refiners will still need to pay for crude.
Let me start from the local refineries, the Kaduna refinery, which is the last one you mentioned. How do you deal with the trunk pipeline that takes crude to Kaduna? Has that trunk line been fixed? That trunk line has been subject of several breaches. So even if you try to fix Kaduna refinery, you have to take crude to Kaduna. How are you going to evacuate the crude to Kaduna? You are still struggling with pipelines that are within the Niger Delta that are transversing from Niger Delta to the export terminals. You now talk of a pipeline around from Port Harcourt and Warri to Kaduna. I think that's a tall order we should not waste our resources on. Then on Port Harcourt refinery, when was the first Port Harcourt refinery established? 1965. The FCC of these refineries, including the new Port Harcourt refinery, have become obsolete. That's the fluke catalytic cracking devices of these refineries have become obsolete. So the monies we've been throwing at these refineries have not worked. So if you cast your mind back to when Dr. Ibekachukwu was the Minister of State for Petroleum, he did say, he initially made a commitment that he's going to have the refineries rehabilitated. I also made a vow that if after a particular period of time, the refineries do not come on stream, that he will have them sold or scrapped. And because after investing so much in those refineries, he came back to us as a people and said to us that the cost of the output from refining a barrel of crude in the refineries was more than the value of the crude. Let me put it clearly. Let's assume the price of crude today is going for $96, which is what it's going for today. And then you take a crude you would have sold for $96 and refine, you end up with a refined product output that has a value of less than $95 or maybe less than $90. So it then means saying that you export the crude and bring in a refined petroleum product. Well, that is how obsolete the refineries that you're mentioning will come on stream. We've been living with the promise that this refinery will come on stream every 6 months or every 1 year. And my take is that we should stop throwing good money after bad money. We should focus on taking the right policies that will stimulate or encourage private sector investors to invest in the refinery business and then set up modern refineries that are efficient. Now, going to Dangote refinery. Yes, there will certainly be some cost savings when Dangote refineries come on stream, particularly costs related with shipment. But remember that Dangote refinery is set up in an export-oriented location. Dangote refinery will buy crude in the international market, whether it's buying from Nigeria or buying from any other part of the world. He has to pay dollars to buy the crude, and when he does pay dollars to buy the crude, he has to sell the refined petroleum product at the price that it will recover its cost and make some margin, which then means that the federal government of Nigeria has to pay Dangote dollars if we're going to continue with the current subsidies to import refined petroleum product from Dangote refineries. We're still going to have the outlay of dollars. And if we continue to subsidize petroleum products, the part of what we import will still go to Cameroon and go to Benin Republic, go to Niger Republic, go to Chad. And then that means we will continue to spend a huge part of our reserve to import refined petroleum products that are we're importing and basically supplying to our neighboring countries. So Dangote refinery will have some relief in terms of cost, landing cost, when you take out cost of some element of cost of shipment. But it still has to be imported by the federal government, or when we deregulate, if we deregulate, the private sector operators will import it, pay dollar, and until we set up local refinery within the local environment. And then those refineries are set up by those who have crude, and they can refine their crude, which is what will happen when we deregulate. You're going to have marginal feed operators who the cost of transporting the crude to export terminals are more expensive than the cost of setting up a refinery by their gates. So they're going to set up refineries by their gate, marginal modular refineries by their gates, and refine these products and sell in the local market. That is what we're going to bring down the price of refined petroleum products in the country.
Well, finally, before I let you go, NNPC, yes, limited, like we say, profit making, they must make some money. What's your reaction to all of the accusation? Because they're saying that this might not give a level playing ground to other players in the industry.
Well, the key thing is, like I said, they occupy a market maker position in the sense that their own government, they are the largest. They are now the largest operator in the Nigerian oil and gas sector. They are the most integrated operator in the industry, starting from exploration to production of crude. They have a strong footprint in the downstream sector with the acquisition of additional retail outlets. So they also enjoy subsidy. Added to that, they collect commission for importing refined petroleum products from the country. For the country, they have access to dollar from central bank. They still collect commission. So they enjoy some level of economic rent. So they are in a position to make profit. But the good thing about it is that the profit actually belongs to the country, or because they are still owned by the government. But ultimately, they're going to be privatized. They'll be owned by the private sector operators. I believe at that point, they will be divested of these market-making privileges they have, and that other operators will also have access to FX and compete. Because when you have a free market competition, is when you will enjoy the benefit having NNPC operate and also have other business operator in those sectors. That's when your competition will set in, and that's where the consumers, you and I, will now repossess the market power from those few operators.
I must thank you so much, Mr. Johnson Chukwu is the founder and managing director, Carrier Assets Management Limited, for breaking this down and making us understand better. Thank you so much for your contributions on the program.
My pleasure.